everyone, my name is Brittany Lewis and welcome to this week's Paint With Me Live. I'm a professional graphic designer and illustrator, and Sundays is set up so that I can work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. And of course, this Sunday we are jumping right back into the Five of Swords of the series. This is card number 45 of the series, so we're making our way through. But before we get into today's live stream, if you would like to support me in any way, shape, or form, the easiest, quickest, and freest way to do that is to just show up here and also to hit the like button. So let me know that you're in the chat by saying hey. But also, if you like live creation videos, be sure to hit the like button. That helps a whole lot. Hey TN lady, come on now. I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, so that is the fastest way to help me out. It helps push the video out to more people who may also like live creation videos and people that you think would enjoy this video as well. Other ways that you can support me is by visiting the links down in the description, where you can find all kinds of artwork that you can purchase, as well as ways that you can hire me if you feel like you have a project that I would be a great fit for. So I hope y'all are having a good week. We are picking right on back up with this card. Now I will admit that this card is probably taking me a little bit longer than it should. It's a relatively simple design in terms of the composition and the number of elements. It's not a super busy card, but I've been busy. Right, I've just been kind of busy with life and with other art projects and other art opportunities, so this is taking a little bit of time. But for me, anytime I set aside at least a few minutes to work on this project, no matter how busy I am, things tend to continue to sort of work out and fall into place for me. So the moment that I sort of divert all of my attention to other things and kind of leave this project to the wayside, I tend to have a hard time, right? So of course, Sundays is the day that I set aside for that, so it kind of helps me stay on track, even if it's just at a snail's pace, even if it's just like little bit by little bit. I still sort of get a little bit done, and then when we pick back up the momentum, when things slow down in other areas, and we can just stay on track. Right? So this week, speaking of, yesterday, I believe, I actually saw someone mention that they wanted to start a tarot deck, but they think they're too slow for it, right? So just a little bit of backstory for this project. This project started in late 2019. So I've been working on this project off and on for a very long time. In that, I've learned a lot, and I would like to share with you guys some of the things that you can do if it is something that you want to take on for yourself. Creating a tarot and an oracle deck is a huge undertaking, right? Especially if you're doing it by yourself. Now, if you're working with someone and maybe you guys tag team on the aspects of the project itself, or if you're working with a team, then of course that time goes by a lot faster and you're not sort of making all of the decisions, by yourself. But if it is something that you're taking on by yourself, such as myself, I'm doing it right now anyway, by myself, there are some things that you can do to sort of prepare yourself for the journey. The first thing to do is to sort of take out whatever expectation of how long you think this is going to take and throw it out the window, right? Because this project, again, is a huge undertaking. So first of all, let's consider a few things. A tarot deck consists of not only the card illustrations, and I thought I had some here on my desk. I actually do. Yes, I do. It not only consists of the card illustrations themselves, but you also have to design the backs, right? Now, tarot, of course, has some advantages because it does follow a system. So when you're coming up with designs and things like that, you have a blueprint in place to help you sort of move through and figure out what you want to draw per card, because those things traditionally follow a system. Now, there are a couple of different systems, but once you kind of figure out which system you want to follow with and sort of go with as your baseline, then deciding what the cards are is sort of already laid out for you. So for instance, I have Everyday Tarot here by Bridget Esselmont, and this deck came out, I would say maybe 2018, 2019, something like that. Let's see if it'll zoom in for me. Maybe not. But anyhow, this is a tarot deck that I carry around. So on the front, we have the illustrations. That's what you guys have been watching me create through the course of this series, through Paint With Me Lives, and also through Bring Your Own Projects. We're working on the fronts, right? But not only do we have the front illustrations, but you also have a graphic design component. Now, those components just pretty much are in control of your numbers and the names for each card, right? And then you also have a back design. So of all of the 78 cards that you are creating, you're also creating a 79th illustration with the back design. So you have to figure out how you're going to do that. Are you going to hire somebody to do it? Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to do it traditionally with paints or paint and ink or, colored pencils? Are you going to create traditional artworks for your deck, or are you going to work digitally? Either way, your files are going to need to be digitized in order for you to send them off to the printers, right? So I chose to work digitally because I don't have the space for just 79 illustrations or paintings, right? I don't have the space for it, and it's just a little more convenient for me to work digitally as opposed to doing traditional work. So that is what I opted to do. There's no real right or wrong answer. I am not pro AI, but you will see people who will turn to that as a medium. Of course, if you're going that route, it's going to go a lot faster, but to me it lacks a bit of soul and nuance. And of course, if you're not able to sort of catch the anomalies that AI produces, it's going to look a hot mess, right? More often than not, there are going to be things that people are going to pick up on that's not going to be great. However, if you're working and wanting to produce something yourself, pick your medium. It could be watercolor, it could be oil paintings, it could be acrylic paintings, it could be gouache, pastels, it could be digital, whatever you're going to, photography as well. It could be photography. It could be just words. However you want to do that, that's sort of the first decision that you have to make. The second thing that you have to know before you start to create your images is how big your tarot deck is going to be. Now, this particular deck is smaller than your average tarot deck. This is the size of a playing card, right? Typically, I believe they're about 70 by 120 millimeters tall. There's a standard size. Now, the size for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot is actually going to be bigger than the standard size. So this is smaller than the standard size, and the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, which is the deck that we're working on, is going to be bigger. But your size is going to help you out because that's not only going to dictate the size of your cards, the size of your book, it's also going to dictate the size of your box, right? So that is a super important thing to sort of figure out. If you're starting out, I would not opt for a custom size. That is something that I did because when I first started this project, I didn't know that there was a standard size, right? At the time, I think I only owned maybe 2 decks or so. By the time I started working on this project, 2 or 3. I would say 2 or 3, and they were all different sizes, right? And so I did not do the research into sort of the standard size until a little bit into doing this project. It wasn't very long after I started, but by the time I got there, I had already made up my mind as to what size I wanted to create the deck. So do know that there is a standard size for tarot cards, and that helps a whole lot because there's a standard size. When it comes time to printing, you don't have to pay extra fees for die, custom size dies and boxes and things like that. Most printers will have that sort of stencil or however it's like a die cut thing that they cut all the cards out. All of that will be sort of standard in regular process creations, right? But because I am doing a custom size, when I spoke to some of the printers, they let me know that there's going to be a custom fee to set up for this custom size. So I knew that going in, pretty early on into the process. I did not know that at first, right? So you want to make sure that you are settled on your size. Again, I would highly recommend just going to standard size to save yourself a headache. But that is something to take into consideration and also to sort of think about as you're moving forward, creating your tarot deck. Now, again, you have to decide on how you want your art to be done, but also you kind of have to figure out if you're going to be doing it yourself or if you're going to be hiring someone to do it. Now, again, this is a massive undertaking, right? So if it's something you want to do yourself, by all means, more power to you. But if it is something that you're going to hire for, you have to anticipate working with that person for a number of years, not just a 6-month project. The average time for the creation and completion of a tarot deck is 2 to 5 years. I'm a little bit over the average, right? Of course, I've been working on this for about 6 years or so it has taken me a little bit longer, but I have not been working on this consistently. I have started off real strong 2019, and the pandemic hit 2020, so I didn't have much else to do except work on this. So I was able to get quite a bit done in those first couple of years. It slowed down almost to a stop 2023. That year I only completed a card, and then we picked back up June 2024, and we've been working consistently ever since then. But I think if I had been completely consistent with it, we probably would be done by now, probably going into print. for me, it kind of works out in my advantage, because from the time that I started to recent years, these sort of trade agreements have been changed, tariffs have been added into products that are imported, and so business around import and export and printing and pricing and all of that has completely changed since the beginning of this. And I think that if I had finished this project earlier on, it would have been during some of those like really, really harsh changes, and I'm not really sure that I would be able to produce this deck at that time. So it kind of worked out in my advantage, or at least I'm going to take it as a silver lining anyway, that it has taken me so long to finish this deck. But that is something that to just kind of keep in mind: the size, right? How you want to create it, who you want to do it. Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want to hire someone? And if you are hiring someone, just again anticipate working with that person for a number of years. Now, with that, creating and producing and hiring someone for such a large project is going to be costly, right? So if you are hiring someone to do your illustrations, it is not a cheap project, not in time and not in finances, right? So I don't know that I don't know yet what will be a fair price for me in terms of like creating this particular deck, but I know for the average person it would probably be way more than they're thinking of, you know what I mean? So if that's something that you want to hire someone to do, now there again, there are always going to be artists that are going to work within any budget, so just kind of keep that in mind. But you do want to have a budget in mind. Now if you're not sure how much it's going to cost, ask people. We can have a private conversation. I'll probably give you a roundabout of what I would probably charge in terms of each card, but that'll give you a starting point as to knowing what some artists charge versus what others charge. But that is something to keep in mind. You're going to be working with this person for a number of years, right? And it is going to be it can be a very expensive project to undertake. Also, you have to take into consideration what are the rights, right? Now, tarot decks are highly visual decks. They do come with a guidebook, so maybe you're doing the guidebook you're writing, or maybe you're hiring someone to write the book, but they are highly visual, right? So you have to consider, if an artist creates the images, how do you want to set up your rights, right? Now, off top, if someone creates something for you, unless it's under a work for hire agreement, the artist owns the rights to that. Now, as an artist myself, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pair or collaborate with someone on a tarot deck, because I know that the art is the main sort of driving vehicle for this particular medium, and I write, right? You know what I mean? But I think that I can see the value in maybe having someone do part of the writing, but I don't know how I would split sort of the royalties and do that kind of thing. That is something that you'll have to discuss and sort of come to a great agreement with the person that you hire for your deck. But do take into consideration, a deck is highly visual, right? So again, to show you this card from Everyday Tarot from Bridget Esselman, it's all visual, right? And as we're reading decks and things like that, although there is a guidebook that comes with this, and I could read it if I needed references and things like that, for the average reader, the guidebook is not quite as important as the cards themselves. So that is something to take into consideration as you are hiring someone. Now, if you are doing this yourself, most decks do come with a guidebook, right? So it is important to know a little bit of something about tarot. I don't think that you have to necessarily be a tarot reader. However, I do believe having some connection to the medium sort of shines through your artwork, right? So you want to understand what it is that you're doing. And being a reader kind of helps you sort of understand what people are looking for when they are purchasing and collecting decks. Now, one of the things I know a lot of us kind of run into as we're creating things and coming up with new ideas is that we're afraid that once other people are going to steal our ideas, two, there's going to be a huge competition when it comes to producing a project. And because of that, we tend to sort of limit ourselves and sort of put these self-imposed limitations on what it is that we create. But the thing about tarot is most people that read tarot and own decks have a collection of them, right? And again, they follow systems. So this is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. I have several decks that are based on the same system. The things that change is how the images are presented and the way that I read the cards. Different ones have different energies, and I use different ones for different purposes. This particular deck is one that I just kind of carry around as I am sort of on my day-to-day. This is one that I would read if I were reading for people out in public. This is my everyday tarot, right? Tarot deck. This is one that I don't mind sort of taking out of my own like special space and all of that. That's one I take on the go. But there are other decks that I use for different purposes. I have one that I use for ancestral work. I have one that I use for like huge milestones. So I say all that to say, if it is something that you want to do it. Regardless to how many decks are in circulation, there are going to be people who are going to buy your deck to add to their collection, right? And also there are always going to be new readers. So you want to reach those people, reach the people you feel like will get the most out of the deck that you are creating. So don't worry about the competition aspect of it. Again, there are always going to be people who are going to be producing decks as they come. Now, since I've started, buku decks have come out, right? Some much faster, of course, than mine. Some are still in progress that have been, made around the same time that mine started. It just is what it is. But you cannot sort of not rely on, but sort of allow the thought of other decks being in existence and coming out faster than yours and all of that dictate whether or not you move forward in the field. Because most, again, tarot readers and people who do cartomancy and sort of read with cards have a collection of them, right? So I always look for new ones to buy to this day. Now, my collection is I would say about 20 to 30 decks or so. Again, I use different ones for different purposes. Different ones read differently from others, even in the same system, even by the same creators. You'll have creators that put out multiple decks and they will read completely different. So don't let that discourage you. The other thing you kind of want to take into consideration as you're creating your deck is your theme, right? Now, when I went off into creating the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, I didn't necessarily have a theme. It was one of those things where there were certain things I knew I wanted to do, right? I knew I wanted it to be somewhat leaning towards science fiction. I knew I wanted it to be black speculative and Afrofuturistic art heavy, right? And I also knew that I wanted my major arcanas to have the alchemy symbols for their elements somewhere in the scene, right? And I wanted it to have, again, this very sci-fi look. But in terms of like a theme, for instance, I have a Crow Tarot. This everyday tarot is very simplistic. It's themed after the Rider-Waite, but it's a very simple theme. I have others that are themed after like animals and spirits and deities and things like that. You kind of want to have some sort of theme in mind. The quicker you figure that out, the easier, more cohesive things will be. I have found that as I am creating this deck, what helps me is to sort of plan my cards in batches, right? And so having a theme kind of helps you stay on track. Now, I've been kind of using this one or this particular project as a way to exercise my sort of creative intuition. So, and also that I think adds to how long this is taking, right? So oftentimes the cards are inspired by my own experiences, my own life experiences, my own sort of expectations for how the card should look. It can be inspired by movies sometimes. It can be inspired by recent events and recent thoughts and things that I'm working through. So I do try to keep it, again, sort of in line with that Afrofuturism. Another thing that was super important for me in this deck was to have it represent the African diaspora worldwide, right? I also wanted to add into it mythical creatures and folklore and all of these different things. So as we look at the cards, you'll find nine-tailed foxes, right? You know what I mean? You'll find monks. You'll find nods to Hinduism and nods to sort of Ifa and Afro spiritual systems. African spiritual systems, You'll find nods to some of my favorite stories and to mischief, and all kinds of things are found in this particular deck. And to me, that sort of adds to the futuristic aspect of it. And so that's where my theme is, right? You also kind of want to have a why. Why are you creating a tarot deck in the first place? That is going to keep you on track for those days that you may not know whether or not you are doing sort of the right thing, right? So that kind of comes up, especially for a project that takes as long as it takes to develop a tarot deck. You want to have your why pretty solidified. For me, it's very easy. I wanted to do this deck for a very long time before I even started it. And the main reason was because the decks that were in circulation, and many of them to this day, I have a hard time finding me in these decks, right? Now I've amassed a good collection of 20 to 30, right? It's nothing outrageous or anything like that. But each one of those decks I picked because I saw some aspect of me in them. Even in something like the Everyday Tarot, which looks like this, I loved how simple and easy this was to read. I also really like Bridget Esselmont. I think she's a really cool lady. Had an opportunity to meet her and interview with her a couple of years ago, and she showcased me as like one of the up and coming black readers, and it was awesome. Right? So I'm a fan of Bridget Esselmont, so of course I would buy something that she puts out because I learned under her. Right? I learned to read very well under her, being a part of her system and her community and all of that. So anyway, but I would find decks that I found myself in, but nothing really truly said Brittany. Right? Nothing really truly said me in a way that, you know, I felt like I could feed the person that wanted to learn when I was a teenager, because this was a medium that I had wanted to learn from the time I was 16 years old, and I purchased my first Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I just couldn't see myself in it. Right? Just like a whole bunch of old white folks in like these funny costumes and things like that, and it was very difficult for me to read and to connect to. And I feel very strongly that if you're working with something like a tarot, something like a oracle or Lenormand or playing cards or things like that, you want to feel some part of yourself connected to those mediums, because it is a very spiritual and very personal and introspective thing. Right? So that is very important to me, and that is my why. I wanted to create something that I could connect to, and because I don't think I'm an anomaly, I feel like if I want to see a certain thing in a motif and in the medium of tarot, then there are other people who are going to connect to it as well. And I've been super fortunate in that a lot of you guys have found me through this project. And of course, I am very humble and sort of grateful and appreciative for each and every one of you guys who have been following along with this. Hey, Black Z2. So whether you guys have been here from the beginning or you're just now finding me for this project, I really appreciate it. But sort of having a theme, right? Having your why in place, knowing the size and how you want to create this deck, whether it is through traditional art, whether it is through digital art, whether you're going to hire someone or do it yourself, those are some decisions that you're going to have to make before you start your project. Right? Now again, planning. Now, I did not again plan for this project at all. It was just something I kind of jumped off into because I wanted to do it, and I kept sort of making excuses as to why I shouldn't do it, and wanted to get all my ducks in a row, and wanted to make sure everything was perfect before I started, and sort of going through that whole cycle. For me, it was a cycle of making sure things were just absolutely perfect and in line for me to start this project. But the way that life worked for me at the time that I began was I was kind of pushed into it. You know what I mean? It was around 2017, 2018, I was starting to sort of feel like I want to start creating work that I feel a little more connected to. Now, at the time, I was creating all fan art, and the stuff that I was creating, I liked. It wasn't that I wasn't a fan of the art that I was making. It just felt like I was devoting a whole lot of energy to other people's ideas, right? I'm doing Beetlejuice and Storm and, you know, Bruce Lee and all of these different things and all of these different characters that someone else created. And some part of me wanted to create something of my own, right? I wanted to be very deliberate and self-expressive in the art that I was making. As a matter of fact, in 2018, I had an interview with Black Canvas magazine. And again, at the time, most of my art was fan art. And for a purpose, because I was working a lot of comic book conventions and things like that. And that's just the audience for it. But I had this interview with Black Canvas magazine, and I remember the interviewing asking me, what do you want people to get from the art that you create? And I did not have an answer for this. I'm talking about I did not, and I do real well in interviews. I did not have an answer for it. So much so that I was like, man, I have no idea. Like, let's please skip, because you know, I can't think of anything at the time, because for me, again, I was spending a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of time on other people's IPs, on other people's ideas, on other people's creations, and not so much time exploring my own thoughts and my own sort of creative outlets. So that sort of sparked in me the drive to be very deliberate about the work that I create. Now, I still will do fan art from time to time. I think the last thing I did was maybe 2023, and that was Lopan from Big Trouble in Little China. That's probably the last piece of fan art that I've created in a very long time, right? But I became very, intentional about being introspective in my work and having purpose for my work, right? And I think that just sort of fed something in my sort of artistic self, like I needed to sort of get it out of me, right? And I was like, it don't make sense for me to spend so much time on someone else's sort of ideas and thought processes, even if it's for a specific audience. Now, that was a very scary thing for me to do, right? For one, I'm a super reserved, like just out in the wild, very reserved and private person. Now I'll talk, we get down and get a good kiki in and all of that. But when it comes to sort of being very expressive, I'm more of an observer than I am someone who will be very open, right? But I find that the art kind of gives me the outlet to do so. So I'm going through this situation where I need to express myself as authentically as I possibly can. I'm also separately, right, trying to find tarot decks that I can connect to and want to sort of see myself in. I had a couple, like the Crow Tarot, and I had a Golden Line and think Golden Thread and things like that. But I was not seeing me, right? So I was like, okay, these two problems are existing at the same time. Also, third problem, as I was trying to get my ducks in a row, I was applying for like public arts, like grants and things like that to do murals and, different exhibitions, and all kinds of stuff was happening all at the same time to get my ducks in a row, right? So that I could fund the project, so that I wouldn't have to take on other projects while I work on it, and nothing was coming together. I'm talking about at all. That was one of 2018 into about up till I started in October 2019 were some of the roughest creative years I've had, because I wasn't satisfied with the work that I was doing, and anything I was trying to do outside of sort of the fan art Comic Con space was falling through, right? And I just didn't know where to go. I'm talking about when I tell you I was having like a whole existential crisis around it. Like it was meltdowns on meltdowns. So it was like, okay, all right, let me stop procrastinating this tarot deck. Let me get to it and start. And that's where we've been, right? Now, anytime again I get distracted with other things, what would happen is, as I was doing the deck and as I was showing and showcasing the progress of the deck and, telling the stories behind it and sharing the images and interpreting the images, and I was still actively reading tarot and all of that, I would get projects just off the strength of the things that I was producing publicly, right? So I was getting projects. I was like, okay, stuff starting to fall in line, right? You know what I mean? Things are looking out. I'm starting to get projects from things that are centered around things that I believed in. For instance, I had done some of the logos that I was doing in my graphic design practice were for like spiritual businesses and natural businesses and in the realm of things that I wanted to do. Some of the t-shirt designs were for people who were doing spiritual lectures and all kinds, just meeting all kinds of wonderful people that were, to me, in alignment with this particular project. However, when I was having those things come about, I was sort of putting this project off to the wayside, and the moment that happened, things started to fall apart, right? So we followed apart again. So get back into it, then things pick back up. Then people, it gets kind of popular, and I get hired a bunch, and I stopped working on it, and again things slow down, right? So once I sort of noticed that pattern, I want to say it took me to 2024 to notice it. I was like, okay, let me get on back to the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and we've been on it ever since. We're reaching 2 years at the end of this month of streaming, and streaming to me helps me stay accountable, and it also helps me stay on track. Now again, this is a huge project, so unless you are someone who is extremely strict and disciplined about the things that you work on, no matter what else is going on, you may not have this issue. But for me, again, every time I would get a project or something else would come up, I would sort of put this project off to the wayside. I wouldn't quit it. It would just slow down significantly, and then things would kind of fall apart, or I would begin to chase more projects to again get those ducks in a row instead of picking back on this dream project. So the thing that sort of helped me to stay on track was to have a day such as Sunday to work on it, to hold myself accountable. Now I chose to do it live because I felt like if I say I go live, even if it's just a few of us in here, if I say I go live, I need to be there, right? You know what I'm saying? It would look horrible if I said, hey, I'm going live to work on this project, and I don't show up. Now again, this channel is relatively small. I think we're at about 800 and 811, something like that, subscribers. At the time that I started, I had maybe 600 and something. I started this channel 2013. I had stopped working on it, you know what I mean? Picked it back up once I got into this. But things, so for me, in this deck really kind of took off once I made time to work on it. Now again, doing this live helps me stay accountable, because it would look horrible if I said I'm going to do these lives and then I don't show up. Now there are days where I can't show up because I have other obligations. There are days when I'm just, not up for it. But for the most part, I do try to push myself to be here every single Sunday. Now we added the second live stream. That is to allow me to do other creative projects. But for the most part, I work on this. So that gives me time, right, to work on the thing that I say I want to do. So if you are taking on a tarot deck, if you're taking on a oracle and you're doing it all yourself, you're going to have to find a way to schedule the time, to work it into your schedule, to work on that project. Right now, it is a huge thing again, so it can be easily overwhelming to do. It can be very easy to lose track of what's going on. So you want to have dedicated time and space for it. Now, one of the things that I have that helps me sort of stay on track for the things other than the scheduled time to work on it, just sort of my way of making sure I know what I've completed and what I have to complete, is that I made myself a spreadsheet. Now, there's a camera here, so my spreadsheet is behind the camera to my left. In that spreadsheet, I have the number of the card, right? I have the name of the card. I have whether or not I've written the guidebook entry. And now, because I love a challenge, I decided to create a companion book, which would be a super deep dive into this deck, some of my research and things like that, some of the thought processes that go into the designing of the cards and the meanings and the numerology and all of the tarot geeky things right, are going to go into that companion book. So I have that there. I have whether or not it is a major arcana or a minor arcana card, and then I have a checklist to tell me whether I've completed the illustrations. It kind of helps me stay on track. So as I'm doing the cards, and because again I didn't have a plan, I was working the cards out of order. I still sort of work them out of order, but I was working them out of order, and I needed to keep up with what I had done and what needed to be done, right? So I have a spreadsheet that helps me stay on track with that. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that you are sort of know again what all goes with a tarot deck. So you have your deck, you have your cards, you have a guidebook, and you have a box. All of those things will need attention in some aspect, right? So your cards, you're going to need to illustrate and design in terms of like where you're going to put the numbers and the names on the front. The back has to have a design. You have to write, edit, design, and lay out your guidebook. If you're going to have a guidebook, some people do a QR code where they have like a website or something like that to go to the meetings. That is something I personally discourage, because I find that a lot of bootleg or counterfeit decks tend to rely heavily on the QR codes, and that can be a real good way for people to sort of to differentiate between your legit deck and a counterfeit deck. So I say do the little white book, the guidebook. You also have the box, which is something that you have to design, you have to lay out, and all of that. The next thing is that you have to figure out where you're going to get these cards printed, right? So, and how much it's going to cost. So very early on, I would say so I started this project October 2019. I want to say about March 2020, I started to reach out to manufacturers, right? And this gave me a really, really good idea for the process of requesting a quote, right? It also gave me a good idea for standard pricing and whether or not this custom size that I was going for is feasible or would be feasible for the printers that I created. Now, at the time, I think I was looking for a course to sort of guide me through the business aspect of creating a tarot deck, and I found one by Benabel Wynn. I think it was like $40 e-download, and came with like a book that she wrote to sort of help guide you through the process. She also provided in that course some manufacturers to contact that she had personally contacted. I think she did a bunch of research, and she's one that is really great about research and things like that, because she's put out I think 3 or 4 decks independently at this point. So I purchased her course. I was like, okay, cool, this kind of gives me some direction. Now, in that, I went out and I reached out to maybe 3 or 4 manufacturers, and I got an idea of what the cost of this was at the time. Of course, things are changed quite a bit, so I have to do this process again. But I also sort of, again, let me know that there is a standard size and there's a fee for your custom size, and then those people sent me a file for the box. So you have to get, tell them what kind of box you want and all that, but you have to figure out who you want to print, where you want to print. Now, in an alternative to that, those people were overseas. I would love to find someone who does this here in the States. I think that would be really good for a number of reasons. One, the language barrier won't be there. Two, if I have to get on a plane to go and visit a manufacturer, it will be much easier for me to do that here in the States than it would be for me to sort of go to China or to Malaysia or wherever the deck will be printed. So that is one advantage of finding a printer here in the States. Now, I have not found one yet. I am still always on the lookout for that. That would also save in tariffs, because tariffs are now a thing. So that would save you money in that extra tax as well. So also, when you order from overseas, you have to get like a broker, and this is a whole process. So you want to kind of figure that out. I think the sooner the better, because then you'll be able to sort of start to think about your pricing for your decks. Now, indie decks tend to be a little bit pricier than those that are published through a traditional publishing house. The reason is because indie creators have to order far less decks than your Hay House or your US Games and those larger sort of publishing companies. They order thousands at a time, so they're able to get their overall cost down, which translates to the price that you might pay at your local Botanica or Barnes & Noble or wherever you're buying your tarot decks in stores. You will notice that indie decks such as, what is one? Tarot the Divine. There are some other decks as well that are indie. I think I don't know if Crow Tarot was indie, but she has since produced some other indie decks. But there are lots of them out there, right? They're usually priced a little bit higher, again, because those creators are ordering far less, right? So you kind of have to keep all that in mind. And also, know your audience and know your market, right? So what is the price that the people that you want to purchase your deck, your ideal target audience, how much are they willing to pay for an indie tarot deck? The other thing is letting people in on the stories, right? So at the end, it kind of goes back to being afraid to share our ideas. Now, you don't have to share everything, and that's perfectly okay to do, but the more that you engage with your audience, the more that you sort of share share your story, share your whys, share your process, the easier time people will have in connecting not only to your deck but also to you as the creator. So that is something I encourage. I have seen people who would say they don't feel comfortable sharing the name of their deck. I don't know. I just feel like the more people are used to hearing about the Cosmic Gateway's Tarot, the less likely there is for it to be stolen. I could be wrong. I don't know. Right? But that is my idea. If more people know that the Cosmic Gateway's Tarot is a thing, if I have proof that I've used this name for years at this point, then it is harder for someone to come in and say, oh no, this is ours, and go through that whole thing. It is not impossible, but it's something I just don't worry about. I want people to connect to the images, and I want them to have a name connected to those images. Now the name could change, and your name could change, and all of that. We could go through all kinds of things until this is done, right? But you want to allow people an opportunity to sort of connect to you, your why, your images, your thought processes, all of that as you are creating your tarot or your oracle or your letterman or whatever the case is. Tell people why it is that you're creating it, what the name of it is, what the name means, where it came from, all of that. Share all of that as a part of your process so that we can connect to you and therefore connect to your deck. So those are some of the things that I have learned along the way as I have been working on this deck. There are many more, and I probably will create sort of a standalone video for this. That way I can kind of show examples of stuff like that on the screen. But until then, let me show you guys that are still here what the Cosmic Gateway's Tarot look like. Now again, this project started in 2019, so we've been working on it for a very, very long time. The card that we're working on today, the Five of Swords, is the 45th card. So getting to the halfway point, which happened last year, was a huge milestone because it took a long time to get there, right? It took a very long time to get there. Now, the advantage of not having a plan early on for me is that each card is a surprise. Each set of cards is a surprise. Now, I do have to go back and draw on older card illustrations that I've done over the years just to keep things consistent. However, what I am surprised to find is that even without doing that, it all kind of flows together, right? It all seems like it's a part of the same body of work. Now, for me, this is the ultimate testament of putting myself into a project and into artwork. So I always think of this as a 78-piece self-portrait, right? every aspect of the cards is create or related to something I've either experienced or something I've learned along the way, something that I know people who have experienced those certain things, ideas and visions and dreams that I want to see. Sometimes it just comes from downloads, just having an idea come out the ethers, and I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds like a great idea, let me try it out and put it into the cards. Now, of all the cards, of the 45, of the 78 in total, I have only 4 major arcana cards. So for those of you who are not aware, your major arcanas are things like your strength card, your hermit card, your lover's card, your tower, your devil, death, all of those things. I have 4 of those left to do. I have the sun, moon, star, and the chariot of those left to do. Each one of those I have tried, right? Each one of those I have worked on at a certain point. I just kind of got stuck and could not figure out how I wanted to articulate it. Still to this day, I don't really know. I'm sure if I sort of just made myself do it, I could figure it out. But I have not figured out how I want to create those images in this space. The minors, we're working on the 5, so I have one more 5 after this one, and we're done with the 5s, and then we'll just kind of keep going in order: 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I also have to do the aces and the kings. But I have the pages complete, I have the queens complete, I have the knights complete. I do not have the aces or the kings done. And so we're working our way through. I find that the easiest thing for me to do, again, is to create in batches. So what I'll do is I'll actually plan these cards in sets of 4. Since we're working in the minor arcana cards, there are 4 suits, and so for every number or like king queen card, right, there are going to be 4 of each, right? So that helps me kind of keep those in theme, find the similarities between the 4 cards, and then use that as a story and a bridge across them. I also am looking at the cards that I've done before in the same suits, and that kind of allows me to create these stories. Now, as I have moved from the major arcana cards into the minors, as we are creating this deck, I find that I have a whole lot more freedom in visual storytelling, with the majors, as opposed to the with the minors as opposed to the majors, because the majors represent archetypes. So that for me is my time to like create these deities and these very celestial images and like all of this drama in the major arcana cards, because that deals with a lot of like major life events when we're reading tarot. With the minor arcanas, such as the 5 of Swords that we're working on, this deals with your everyday life, right? It's just everyday, mundane, day-to-day things, right? And so it allows me to tell more stories. And to me, even though this is for a specific project, that kind of helps push me forward as an artist. And it translates. So as I am working on book covers, as I am thinking about comic books and, interiors and children's books and things like that, being able to practice visual storytelling within this particular project has helped elevate my artistic skills in other areas, right? Now, I am what you consider a multidisciplinary artist. I keep saying this recently because I'm getting more comfortable with it, right? I do a lot of artistic things. My main business, of course, is in graphic design and illustration, but I paint, you know what I mean? I take a picture or 2 here and there. I do write as well. So as I am sort of making my way through this deck, the things that I'm learning about myself as a person, as well as my artistic skills, are helping to sort of push those other mediums forward in the most positive and beautiful ways. So as someone who may be thinking about doing a tarot deck, doing just a large project in general, whether it is tarot oracle, whether you're writing a movie or creating a music, or whatever you're doing, creating a business from scratch, it's going to teach you a whole lot about you, right? It's going to teach you a whole lot about your confidence. It's going to teach you a whole lot about your organizational skills. It's going to teach you and push you forward to manage such a huge project, right? It is going to force you to ask for help where you need it. It is going to force you to be very vulnerable, or so it has for me. And so this project is one, again, it's a huge undertaking. And so for that young lady who said that she wanted to do a tarot deck, but she felt like she was too slow, there's no deadline. You know what I mean? Of course, we want to get it done as fast as we can, but I think there is beauty in taking your time with this kind of project, because people are using it for their own spiritual practices, right? So you want to make sure you're very intentional and very deliberate about the images and the stories that you tell in your cards. It is that big of a deal to me anyway, right? People can say it's not that big a deal, it's just cards, whatever the case is, but for me it is very much that big of a deal, because I'm I want people to feel something as they're reading with these cards. Just like I feel different things from the different cards that I read. I want to be very intentional about that with my own project as well. So having a slower process actually works in my favor. Now, sometimes it get a little discouraging, especially earlier on. Nowadays, not so much, but earlier on, it was real discouraging to see that, okay, in my mind, my super overly confident self was like, oh, 2 years, I'm good, right? I think I was listening to a podcast with Bridget Esselmont, and she was speaking to the illustrator for this deck, the Everyday Tarot deck. Now, mind you, look at this deck, this card, right? Super simplified imagery. It's very, very simple imagery. And then the level of detail I'm putting in mind. Now, I like this because it's simple, but the artist that created this deck said that she created it in 6 months. I believe it. It looks like something that she probably could handle in 6 months. This ain't something that I can handle in 6 months, right? Obviously, right? We've been at it 6 years. So in there, I'm thinking, okay, cool. She's took 6 months on hers. All right. And then I'm watching some other artists that I really like. Yoshi Tiny and R Black were the two that I was really, really watching. I got both of those, thank goodness. Yoshi Tiny's is the Tarot of the Divine, and R Black was just R Black Tarot. And R Black Tarot is probably closest to this because both of them used a unified palette. So all of the cards followed the same palette. I want to say that R Black's art was a lot more simplified than Yoshi Tiny's. Yoshi's was much more sort of graphic in a way, slightly more illustrative. But anyway, I'm watching these people do their decks, and they knocking theirs out in like 2 years, 2 or 3 years or so. I think I followed both of them for about 2 years before they came out. And I'm watching other deck creators come out. Menzel's Tarot, I think he did his in like less than a couple months. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, I'm averaging all these 4 projects or whatever. I'm like, all right, 2 years max. I should be good. But by the time year 2 came, I was like, oh man, maybe I'm doing something wrong. And I started to worry about it taking so long. And then I was getting like messages and things like that was like, all right, man, what's taking you, what's taking you so long? And when is the deck coming out? And at first I was like, oh my goodness, I was beating myself up like, oh man, it's taking me way longer than it should. And then I started to embrace those for a slightly different reason. I would look at those as encouragement and say, okay, people are really wanting this deck, so let me go ahead and continue to work on it. But I did not anticipate it taking 6 years. It's just part of the process. I'm glad that I have gotten to a point in this project where I am not super concerned about how long it's taken, because again, I kind of see that as a superpower. I see that as a way of me just being very intentional and very deliberate about what it is that I create for this project, and that kind of works out in my favor. However, having done I talked to you guys about having the artwork in the museum of about a month or so ago, and that painting was one that I had an idea, I went with the idea, I created the idea, and I did not have time enough to overthink. That worked in that situation. It just depends, right? Everything to me is a balancing act, and I believe that this project is sort of teaching me a lot about that, right? Some cards are going to go by a lot faster. I've done cards, I remember the first real fast one I did was the hanging one. And that was my interpretation of the hangman. Now, for this deck, I was not going to create a black man or black woman hanging from a tree. That was like absolutely not. So I was able to sort of change the imagery and the motif and the lean more into the meaning of that card. And I created a little girl hanging from monkey bars in a very playful way. I think I finished that card in like a day or 2. And I was like, oh, I did something wrong, right? Whereas last year, we were working on the 4 of Wands, and I clocked 70 hours on that card, right? And that's give or take 70 hours, because some of it was recorded and some of it wasn't. So I say all that to say some cards take a little longer than others. You just have to be patient with the process, and again, just kind of continue and have grace for yourself, just so long as you are enjoying the process. Now, the moment you stop enjoying the process and you start adding unnecessary and undue pressure on yourself as you're working through your tarot deck and your oracle deck, take a break. Right? Take a minute, walk away from it, go do something else, and then if you feel so inclined to finish it, come back to it and finish it, then do that. Come back into it and finish it. And that way, again, the energy and the sort of time and intention that you're putting into your cards feels a whole lot better. It doesn't feel like a chore. Sometimes I have to do that. for this particular card, only for this one, and I think a lot of it comes down to wanting to explore other modes of creativity at the same time that I'm working on this. I'm having a lot of different opportunities come up. So for me, it is becoming more of a desire to work on other things. And I think that is greatly impacting the amount of time that it's taking me to finish this, because this should have been done, right? But also I don't have the next card finished, right? So it's just finding that balance, finding time to work on other things as my creative brain wants to sort of work on those other things, but also having that time and space set aside to work on your dream project. For me, it is Sundays. Sometimes it's only during these live streams, right? Sometimes it carries on for the rest of the Sunday. Like I might work on it this evening, which I think for me I will, because I have not spent a whole lot of time on this card. So just to kind of push myself forward, once we finish streaming, I'll probably continue to work on it. But you have to kind of set aside time to do that, as well as live your life, as well as take care of your other responsibilities, as well as explore other things that you might want to explore, to sort of find a way to find balance so that you do not burn out. But if you do feel that need to take a break, right? Don't worry about if the lady that did Everyday Tarot finished it in 6 months. Don't worry about if your favorite artist or tarot deck finished theirs in 2 years. Don't worry about me taking 6 on mine. It may not take you 6 years, and that's perfectly okay. Just sort of go at your own pace, show yourself grace, and you'll be all right. Right? So with that in mind, I have not done a whole lot on this today during our live stream, but I think I am going to call it a day and work on this a little bit longer today before we come back on Wednesday for Bring Your Own Project Live. So if you like this video, if you're interested in doing a tarot deck, let me know if you want to see like a full length video on it. I know this was like, we've been here for 50 minutes and that's all we've been talking about, but maybe something a little more structured so I can kind of give you step by step of what I would recommend doing in the process of creating your tarot deck, as far as I can take you, right? Because obviously I haven't finished this one yet, but there's a lot I've learned along the way about producing a project of this size, just the business aspect of it. I think that is a lot of what many artists sort of come short of, is that business part. So if you want to sort of kind of get a little bit of a guideline, let me know, and I'll do and I might do it anyway, but I might do a standalone video for some of the things that I've learned and what I would recommend you guys do if this is a project, or you're thinking about a project, or thinking about hiring someone to do this particular type of project for you. So without further ado, if you guys like this video, make sure you hit a thumbs up. Let me know again if you want to see a full length video. Even if you do it now, I'm probably gonna do it anyway. But make sure you subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. I have a couple of standalone videos that we'll be producing here soon. I started editing one that is a painting that I did very recently. So again, I've had lots of things come up that kind of keep me from working on this as consistently as I did last year, because I had far fewer things to do. But I do have a video coming up about that painting. That one I probably won't talk in. The client that I did the painting for has hired me for, I think this is his 4th painting, and for the previous 2 of the previous 3 I did like a speed time-lapse for, and so he really liked those. So this is going to be in the same vein as that time-lapse type of video, but the second video is going to be a vlog about my journey to create and complete a painting in 2 weeks that went into a museum exhibition show. My very first time ever being in an exhibition, and I want to say first time being in an exhibition, and the first time that I've been in a museum. The only reason I was questioning the first time an exhibition is because I used to do a convention here in Memphis, and adjacent to that convention was an art show, and so you could put your art in that show, even if it was fan art, and that would be a part of it. I don't know if I want to count that or not. So my very first time in an exhibition, and sort of how I came to that, some of the obstacles that I had within that 2 weeks, some dealing with like just navigating that particular situation, right? And so that'll be coming up as well. And then we have some other things in the work that I'm super excited about. I got some new mics. Man, audio gonna be great. So anyway, I won't talk y'all ears off too long. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. So whether you're watching this live or the replay, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me just a little bit of your time, even if it wasn't the whole time. So again, if you have not yet, hit the like button and subscribe. There are going to be some links down in the description for other ways for you to support me as well. And until Wednesday, I'll see you guys later. Peace.